Have you ever looked at someone's life, their success, their fitness, their discipline, and thought, what's their secret? Let me break this to you early. There is no secret, no magic, no miracle, no mystery formula they were handed in some private room. What they have is something you've had access to your entire life. They just used it, and you didn't. That thing, it's not talent, it's not luck, it's not who they know. It's consistency. Yeah, I know, it doesn't sound glamorous. It won't sell headlines. But it's the difference between people who talk about wanting to change and those who do. Here's the brutal truth. You don't need more inspiration. You don't need another motivational quote plastered on your screen. You don't need someone screaming, "You can do it," over a dramatic soundtrack. You need to be the kind of person who shows up every single day, even when nobody's watching. Especially when nobody's watching. The difference between who you are right now and who you could be isn't buried under some deep mystery. It's sitting right in front of you. It's in the little things you do, the boring things, the things you skip, the things you tell yourself, "I'll start tomorrow." Let me ask you something and answer it honestly. How many times have you started something? A diet, a journal, a routine, a promise to yourself. And then what? 2 days later, gone. 3 weeks in, fizzled out. A month later, you don't even remember why you started. It's not because you weren't motivated enough. It's because you didn't stay consistent. And here's where it gets real uncomfortable. If that pattern keeps repeating, you're not just losing time. You're training yourself to distrust your own word. That's not just bad for your goals. That's dangerous for your identity. Because at the end of the day, who are you if you can't even believe yourself? So if you're tired of starting over, if you're sick of seeing other people cross the finish line while you keep quitting halfway, then sit up, listen closely, and stay with me. We're about to unpack the one trait that will turn you into a machine of discipline, resilience, and self-respect. No fluff, no hype, just truth. Let's talk about what happens when you become consistent, not just in what you do, but in who you are. You've been told to chase motivation, that fire in your gut feeling that's supposed to launch you out of bed at 5 a.m., crush your workouts, write the book, start the business, fix your life. That emotion, the high, the rush, that's what people say drives success. And sure, motivation feels good. But here's what no one tells you, it's a liar. Motivation is that loud friend who hypes you up in the moment, then disappears the second things get hard. It shows up at the beginning, when the music is loud, the dream feels fresh, and everything looks shiny and possible. But what about day 10? What about when you're tired, when life gets heavy, when no one's watching and there's no applause? Motivation won't be there then. What gets you through those days, the real days, the unsexy, unfiltered days, is discipline. And discipline is not glamorous. It doesn't give you butterflies. It doesn't care how you feel. Discipline is quiet, it's cold, it's consistent, but it is unbreakable. Here's the thing about people who get results. They don't rely on feeling like it. They've trained themselves to do it anyway. They don't wake up every morning craving a workout. They do it because it's who they are. They don't write, practice, build, or lead only when the mood strikes. They show up regardless of their mood. You know why that matters? Because if your success depends on your feelings, you'll lose every time. Think about it. How often do you actually feel like doing hard things? Almost never. You don't feel like waking up early. You don't feel like making the uncomfortable phone call. You don't feel like studying when your brain is foggy. But you still do it. Why? Because you made a decision that your standards are higher than your emotions. That's discipline. It's when your actions aren't dictated by your moods. It's when you stop asking yourself, "Do I feel like it?" and start asking, "Who do I want to become?" Let me be clear, discipline isn't natural. No one is born with it. It's forged. Like muscle, it grows with reps. The first time you get up at 4:30 a.m. when your body says no, the first time you say no to the quick dopamine hit, the scrolling, the comfort food, the procrastination, the first time you choose the hard thing over the easy out, that's one rep, and then you do it again and again, until one day it's not a battle anymore. It's just your default. See, most people think Motivation is the fuel. But motivation is a spark, and sparks die fast. You need something more reliable, something with staying power. That's where routines come in. That's where systems win. That's where you stop making decisions based on what's easiest and start building a life based on what's necessary. People ask me all the time, how do I stay motivated? You don't. You stay committed. There's a big difference. Motivation asks, do I want to? Commitment says, it doesn't matter, I do it anyway. And guess what? That mindset is rare. That mindset is dangerous. Because when you stop waiting for the mood to strike and start acting based on your mission, you become unstoppable. That's the kind of energy people feel when you walk in a room. That's the kind of integrity that builds trust, not just with others, but with yourself. And that's really what discipline gives you. Self-respect. Because every time you follow through, especially when it's hard, you're proving to yourself, I am who I say I am. I do what I said I'd do. You stack those wins, and suddenly you don't need anyone else to validate you. You become the kind of person who can count on you. That's powerful. That's rare. And it doesn't come from hype. It comes from doing the work daily, without shortcuts, without excuses. So stop chasing motivation like it's your lifeline. It will lie to you. It will abandon you. Discipline won't. Discipline will sit with you in the dark when it's just you and your doubt. Discipline will walk you through the days that break others. Discipline will separate you from the crowd. And in the end, it's not the dreamers who win. It's the doers. The ones who stayed when it was boring, the ones who showed up without applause, the ones who did the thing over and over until it became who they are. That can be you, but you've got to want results more than the rush. You've got to get addicted to the process, because that's where the real transformation happens. Not when you feel like it, but when you do it anyway. And that's the difference between wishing for a life and building one. You're not in control of most things. That's a hard truth, and it doesn't sit well with a lot of people. You can't control the weather. You can't control what your boss decides. You can't control the economy, the algorithm, or what someone else thinks of you. And if you're wasting your energy trying to manage all that, you'll burn out fast. But there's something you can control, and it's more powerful than you think. You can control you, your mindset, your routine, your response, your effort. And that's more than enough to build a life you're proud of. See, people spend their whole lives reacting. They react to traffic. They react to an offhand comment. They react to what didn't go their way. They give away their energy, their focus, their discipline to things that were never theirs to manage in the first place. Let me ask you this. What would change in your life if you stopped trying to control everything out there and started mastering what's in here? Because that's where the game changes. Not in the noise, not in the chaos, but in your response to it. Think about someone in peak condition. You know what makes them powerful? It's not that life is easier for them. They get the same problems, same distractions, same temptations. The difference is they've trained themselves to focus on what they can control. You don't control your genetics, but you control your food, your movement, your sleep. You don't control your upbringing, but you control the choices you make now. You don't control who supports you, but you control your consistency, whether people clap or not. And every time you focus on what's within your reach, you get stronger, not just physically, mentally, emotionally, because you're reclaiming your power. You're choosing not to be a victim of circumstance. You're choosing to own your role in your own story. You ever notice how the most successful people, the calm, composed, focused ones, they're not the ones talking about how unfair life is. They're not ranting about how hard it is or how someone else got lucky. They're quiet. They're steady. They're building, brick by brick, day by day. They've learned the secret. Control is not about controlling others. It's about mastering yourself. That includes how you talk to yourself, because your internal dialogue, it matters. The words you say in your own mind shape your behavior. You can either feed yourself excuses or you can feed yourself direction. The voice in your head can say, this isn't fair, why bother? Or it can say, this is hard, but I'm doing it anyway. And that small shift, that changes everything. Look, life will knock you down. That's guaranteed. People will disappoint you. Plans will fall apart. But what's not guaranteed is how you respond. And that response is what defines your trajectory. You can spiral or you can stand. You can complain or you can correct. You can freeze or you can focus. People who are consistent, they've learned to shift from blame to responsibility. They don't waste time hoping someone else saves them. They become the kind of person who saves themselves. You don't like where you are. You don't like how your body feels. You don't like the direction of your life. Good. That means you've got awareness. Now take that awareness and do something about it. Start small. Control your wake-up time. Control your screen time. Control your habits. Control the first hour of your day before the world even knows you're awake. Because when you take ownership of the small things, the big things start shifting too. And I'll tell you something else. Control isn't always loud. It's not about barking orders or trying to dominate situations. It's calm. It's internal. It's presence under pressure. Control is waking up and deciding, no matter what comes at me today, I'm going to show up. I'm going to be steady. I'm going to stick to my process. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. You want real strength? It's not how much weight you can lift. It's how much you can carry when everything feels heavy and still move forward. You want confidence? It doesn't come from affirmations. It comes from knowing. Deep down, I can handle hard things. I can trust myself. I'm not here to control the world. I'm here to control me. So if life is testing you right now, good. That's your training ground. That's where you get to decide who you are. Will you fold every time it gets hard? Will you wait for the perfect condition that never shows up? Or will you stand up, lock in, and do the work with or without the applause? With or without the perfect setup? Because once you learn to master the controllables, no one can take that away from you. You'll stop living like a passenger, and you'll start driving your life, no matter how rough the road gets. And let me tell you something powerful. When you live that way, people feel it. Not because you tell them, but because you've become solid, rooted, disciplined. Not perfect, but consistent. And that's where your real strength lives. Everyone wants the big win, the overnight transformation, the viral success. We're obsessed with milestones, with breakthroughs, with the moment everything changes. But that moment you're chasing, it doesn't happen by accident. It's not luck. It's not fate. It's not a miracle. It's the byproduct of something far less exciting. Small, consistent repetitions. Not once, not twice, but hundreds, thousands of times. And most of them will feel invisible. Let me say this clearly. Success is built in silence. Not in the loud moments when everyone's watching, but in the quiet ones when no one's around to cheer you on. When you lace up your shoes anyway. When you open your laptop at 5 a.m. Again. When you make the harder choice again and again and again. The real progress. It's boring. It's unsexy. It's not going to make for a great Instagram story, but it works. Because repetition is how you rewire your brain. It's how you build identity. And it's how you prove to yourself that you're the kind of person who finishes what they start. Here's what most people get wrong. They think the key to success is intensity. They go all in on day one. They want to flip their life around in a weekend. So they sprint hard, and then crash, and then disappear, and then beat themselves up for not having willpower. But it's not about willpower, it's about habits. And habits are built by what you repeat, not what you attempt. You don't need to do everything today. You just need to do something today and then do it again tomorrow. And again the day after that. Small doesn't mean weak. Small means sustainable. And sustainable is where real transformation happens. You want to get stronger? Don't go to the gym for 5 hours once a month. Train for 45 minutes a day, every day, for a year. You want to be more disciplined? Don't try to change your whole routine overnight. Pick one part. Wake up 30 minutes earlier. Drink more water. Make your bed. Start there. Then build. Because those tiny choices, they add up. They become your structure, your rhythm, your identity. And repetition doesn't just change your results. It changes you. The more you do something, the less mental resistance you feel. It becomes automatic, normal, a part of who you are. And that's when everything shifts. Not when it's hard to stay disciplined, but when it's harder not to. That's what happens when you commit to small repetitions. You become the kind of person who doesn't need a pep talk to follow through. You stop thinking, should I do this today? You already know the answer. And when you live that way, momentum builds. Because action compounds, just like interest in a bank account. You don't notice much after the first few deposits. It feels like nothing's happening. You show up every day, you put in the reps, and the mirror doesn't change. The numbers don't move. Your inbox is still empty. But keep going. Keep showing up, because the compounding doesn't show up right away. But when it does, it hits hard. That's the part people call overnight success. But you'll know better. You'll know it wasn't one big leap. It was 1,000 tiny steps stacked on top of each other, while nobody watched. So if you're stuck right now, if you're wondering why isn't anything changing, ask yourself this. Are you doing the reps? Are you putting in the work daily, not when it's convenient, but when it's required? Because repetition without recognition is what builds winners. It's easy to show up when there's applause, but can you show up when there's nothing? Can you repeat the boring, simple things, the ones that work even when they don't feel exciting? That's what separates professionals from amateurs. Amateurs wait to feel inspired. Professionals have systems. They don't rely on mood. They rely on reps. Every great athlete, every elite performer, every person you admire, they've done the basics more times than you've even thought about them. Not once, not for a week, not for a month, but for years, they didn't master 100 things. They mastered 5 things and repeated them 10,000 times. So stop trying to change your whole life in one dramatic move. Pick something small. Do it well. Do it consistently. Then do it again. That's how you get stronger. That's how you get sharper. That's how you stop dreaming about the life you want and start building it. Brick by brick, rep by rep, small moves, big results. But only if you stay with it. Only if you respect the power of small repetitions. You say you want results. You say you want transformation, discipline, mastery. But let's get brutally honest. Are you ready for what that really requires? Because the truth is, most people don't fail because they're weak. They fail because they're bored. They start strong, fired up, inspired, energized by the idea of change. They map out routines, buy planners, download apps, follow experts, and for a few days, maybe even a few weeks, they're on fire. But then the spark fades. The results don't come fast enough. The novelty wears off, and suddenly they're done. Why? Because it got boring. Nobody talks about this enough, that boredom is the real killer of consistency. Not pain, not failure, not even fear. Just the slow creeping sense that what you're doing feels repetitive, ordinary, unremarkable. And if you don't learn to embrace that, you'll never see the other side. You'll keep chasing new programs, new hacks, new systems, and you'll stay stuck. Always starting over, always quitting when it's no longer fun. You want the edge? Learn to show up when it's not exciting. Learn to fall in love with the monotony of growth, because mastery in anything lives in repetition. Not variety, not thrill, but doing the same thing over and over until it becomes second nature. You think elite athletes are entertained by the same drills every day. You think world-class musicians are excited to practice the same scales again and again. You think disciplined people wake up thinking, I can't wait to do the exact same thing I did yesterday. No, they do it because they understand something most people don't. Progress is boring. It's slow. It's methodical. And it doesn't come with fireworks. But if you can lean into that boredom, if you can stop fighting it and start trusting it, that's where things begin to change. Let me tell you what boredom really is. It's not a sign that something's wrong. It's a sign that you're on the edge of growth, that you've moved past novelty and into the phase where the real work begins. And here's the part no one wants to hear. This phase doesn't feel good. It feels dull. It feels like nothing's happening. It feels like you're stuck in place, spinning your wheels. But what's actually happening is deeper than what you can see. Repetition is rewiring your habits. It's building mental endurance. It's sharpening your skills, slowly, invisibly, consistently. And most people will never stay long enough to experience that. They'll quit and chase the next shiny thing. Because our culture worships excitement. We've been trained to believe that if it's not thrilling, it's not worth doing. That's a lie. If you want something exceptional in your career, in your fitness, in your mindset, you have to be willing to do boring better than anyone else, to eat the same meals, to follow the same training, to write, speak, study, rehearse, even when no one is watching, especially when no one is watching. That's the gap between dreamers and finishers. Dreamers chase emotion. Finishers chase execution. Now here's what's wild. If you embrace the boredom long enough, something happens. Your brain stops resisting it. It becomes the new normal. And in that space, you develop one of the most powerful assets a person can have. Grit, not hype, not motivation, not even inspiration, but the raw, steady ability to keep going when everything in you wants to check out. Grit is born in boredom. It's built on repetition. It's earned through countless days that feel like they don't matter, until one day they do. Suddenly you wake up and realize you're stronger, more focused, more grounded. You've become someone who doesn't just flirt with discipline. You embody it, and not because it was fun, but because you didn't quit when it wasn't. So let me challenge you with this. If your routine feels boring right now, that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means you're doing it right. You've made it past the hype. Now you're in the building phase. This is where the foundation gets poured. This is where identity is formed. And yeah, it'll test you, because everything in your body will tell you, this is pointless. It's not working. Why bother? But every time you stay the course, every time you say, I'll do it anyway, you lay another brick. You stack another rep. And over time, that structure you're building becomes unshakable because you didn't rely on excitement. You relied on consistency. You didn't need it to feel magical. You just needed it to be done. So stop running from boredom. Stop expecting every part of your journey to feel cinematic. This isn't a highlight reel, it's real life. And the ones who win at life, they are the ones who understand boredom isn't the enemy, it's the training ground. And if you stay with it long enough, it becomes your advantage. Because while everyone else quits when the feeling fades, you will keep going. And that's the person who gets results. Not someday, not eventually, but inevitably. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your habits. That's the truth most people ignore while they're out there chasing motivation and setting resolutions. But motivation fades. It's inconsistent. It's emotional. Habits, on the other hand, are who you become when no one's watching. You want to know who you are? Don't look at what you say. Look at what you do consistently. Not once in a while. Not when it's convenient. Not when you're hyped up, but every single day. Because your identity isn't found in your intentions. It's forged through repetition, through daily choices, through the things you keep returning to again and again, whether they're helping you or hurting you. Most people want a better life. They want to feel stronger, more confident, more in control. But wanting something doesn't mean anything if your actions don't back it up. You can want to be fit, but if you skip workouts, overeat, and sleep 5 hours a night, you're not building the identity of someone who's disciplined. You're building the identity of someone who talks about it, not someone who lives it. There's a moment, sometimes quiet, sometimes uncomfortable, when you realize that your habits are a mirror. They reflect back who you really are, not who you wish you were. That mirror doesn't lie. It shows whether you're someone who finishes what they start or someone who quits when it gets hard. It shows whether you're building yourself or betraying yourself. And when you get real about that, you realize something powerful. Your habits are a vote for the kind of person you're becoming. Every time you wake up early, you cast a vote for being reliable. Every time you train when you're tired, you cast a vote for being disciplined. Every time you say no to distraction, you cast a vote for being focused. And no, one vote doesn't define you, but those votes add up. Over time, they tell a story, and that story becomes your identity. People get stuck because they think identity is fixed. I'm just not a morning person. I'm not naturally organized. I've always had a short attention span. Those are not facts, they're patterns. And patterns can be broken. You weren't born with discipline or weakness. You weren't born focused or distracted. You became that way through repetition, through daily choices, through the things you kept doing until they felt normal. So here's the truth. If you can build an identity, you can rebuild one. You can shift your patterns, rewire your habits, reinvent your process. But it starts with honesty, a hard look at what you've been doing, not just what you've been saying. That honesty, it's not meant to shame you. It's meant to free you. Because once you own your patterns, you can change them. The key is consistency, not intensity. Everyone can show up once in a while, but the people who actually change, they show up even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because they've detached from the outcome. They're not obsessed with what happens in a week. They're focused on who they're becoming in the process. You want to become someone who writes a book? Then write 200 words a day, not when inspiration hits. Every day. You want to become someone who's fit? Train 4 days a week, and not for a month, for a year. You want to become someone who's respected? Show up early, follow through, be consistent, not for applause, for yourself. Because that repetition, that quiet, relentless action, that's how you shift identity. Not overnight, but over time, with intention, with discipline. And yeah, there are going to be days when you don't feel like it. Days when you're tired, frustrated, bored. Good. Those are the most important days, because every time you follow through when it would have been easier to back off, you're reinforcing your identity. You're sending a signal to your mind, this is who I am now. You don't need to do everything. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be consistent with the habits that align with the identity you want to build. That means letting go of the fantasy that one big decision will change your life. It won't. But 1,000 small ones will. This isn't about hustle culture. This isn't about grinding yourself into exhaustion. It's about alignment, about making sure your actions aren't just tasks on a checklist, but evidence of the kind of person you want to become. And once you align your behavior with your values, life gets simpler, not easier, but clearer. Because your choices start to make sense. You don't have to overthink. You just ask, what would the person I want to become do right now? Then do that. Again and again, until it's no longer something you try. It's just who you are. Who you are is what you repeatedly do, not what you wish for, not what you post about, not what you plan on doing someday. It's what you do every day, when no one's watching, when it doesn't feel dramatic or exciting, when it's just you and your process. That's where identity lives. Not in a breakthrough moment, but in the small choices stacked over time until your habits catch up to your vision. Until you wake up one day and realize you didn't just change your routine. You changed who you are. And that's real power, earned, built, repeated every single day. Let's get something straight. You don't need another motivational video. You don't need another quote or podcast or playlist to fire you up for a day or two. What you need is to make a decision, a quiet, internal decision that says, I will no longer negotiate with my excuses. Because if you've listened this far, it means something in you is ready. Not ready for hype, but for change. Real, permanent, grounded change. And that change doesn't start next Monday. It doesn't start when the timing is perfect, or the schedule clears up, or when you feel ready. It starts now, with whatever you have, wherever you are, with no applause and no guarantees. You won't always feel like showing up. You won't always see progress right away. And you will be tempted, again and again, to choose comfort over growth. But in those moments, you remind yourself, I am not chasing feelings. I am chasing identity. And who I am is what I consistently do. You want to be disciplined? Then do the work, even when it's boring. You want to be confident? Keep promises to yourself, especially when no one's watching. You want to be unstoppable? Outlast the mood, outlast the struggle, outlast everyone who's waiting for it to get easier. Because that's the truth they won't tell you. It doesn't get easier. You get stronger. And every rep you show up for, every small act you repeat, every time you embrace the boring, the hard, the uncelebrated, you're not just making progress. You're becoming something unshakable. So walk away from this with one clear message burned into your mindset. Consistency isn't what you do to succeed. Consistency is who you become to never fail again. Now go prove it every day, no matter what. Relentless, consistent, unbreakable, because that is who you are now.